Hello everyone, I hope everyone is doing great today so far. This video is a little bit of an update on my last video, the winter prediction of 2023-2024. But before I get started, all I ask is if you could hit that like button and subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. And if you have any questions, please hit the comments and I'll be more than happy to respond to you. But like I said, this is in my last episode, my winter 2023-24 outlook. And this has been a past 2 weeks or so, give or take. And so far, I don't want to change anything. Maybe I would extend the 1 to 2 degree line back over here and cut it back a little bit more inland towards western New York. But overall, I still want to stick with this forecast. I still believe the subtropical jet would be very active and would have a couple nor'easters on the east coast. And I still believe the west coast will be above average temperature wise, and some parts of the Northwest Pacific will be below average precipitation. One big change that I have seen so far over the past 2 weeks is the European ensemble members when it comes to the polar vortex. In this region here usually sits your polar vortex that is a nice tight ball that spins round and round, keeping the cold air locked in the polar regions of North America and the Northern Hemisphere, I should say. But the European weeklies, as you can see here, the darker the red is, the more warmer it is aloft. That causes a disruption of the polar vortex. And as you can see here, it's a little bit of elongated look here. What tends to happen with that is that you get your cold air funneling down either into North America or into Asia, into Siberia. If this were to happen, you would most definitely have cooler conditions somewhere across the United States, eastern and western, that is to be determined, and back into Eurasia as well. This is what I just showed you, but ensemble means strength plotted. And as you can see here, we are definitely strengthening. I will show you the GFS in a little bit, show you what it does as well. But as from November 2nd all the way up into roughly the 13th, 14th range, it peaks at around 40 strength HPA, 40 HPA at 10 HPA aloft. Now, after that, it looks like some of the models split into quickly weakening and slowly weakening. But notice the mean is definitely weakening as we get into the first and second week of December. Now, if this were to happen and not follow these ensemble members that strengthen all the way up into the 50 range, parts of North America and Eurasia would definitely see a lot cooler temperatures, possibly even. Now, like I was just saying, if the polar vortex does decide to stretch and maybe disrupt anywhere in this blue, that's pretty much stretches all the way from middle of Montana all the way to the east coast, has a higher chance of receiving cold Arctic air. But this isn't the only solution and thing we look into. First off, don't mind the cutoff here. This stretches all the way back into northern Canada. We got to look at the NAO. Now, usually when this type of stuff happens, Southern Stratosphere Warning, SSW, the NAO tends to go negative because you have warmer air aloft that causes high pressure to build and stretch the polar vortex. Now, I would say 80 to 90% of the time, the NAO tends to go negative. So if you have blocking in this region, the cold air is forced to be funneled down somewhere into the United States. Now, if you take that into accountability and you have your PNA here, if the PNA is negative, the trough will set up on the west coast and force ridging out in the east, and the NAO pushes the cold air down into parts of the western coast. But if it's positive, the opposite happens. As you can see here, it would funnel down even more cold air down into the eastern and central part of the country and causes, as you can see here, a trough setting up, causes your Arctic air to come down into the United States. And also, the most important one is your EPO. Also, with the southern stratospheric warming, with the EPO also tends to go negative when that happens. So let's say you have a negative EPO, a positive PNA, and a negative NAO. This is what your jet stream would look like here. Straight down from Canada, all the way down into the United States, and cold, and I mean cold Arctic air, if this were to happen. But let's say if we have a negative NAO, let's say negative PNA, but a negative EPO, this is, I would say, almost like this type of setup. It wouldn't get driven as far south because you don't have blocking over here, but you do have blocking over here, so it is not forced all the way over here into the western coast. But if this NAL decides to be positive, this decides to be negative, and this decides to be positive, and let me just erase everything real quick. I'm sorry about that. Erase everything. You will 100% have troughing out in the west, and you'll have your southeast ridge built into the United States, and your storm track would look like this. This would be very detrimental towards, let's say, Southern California for a lot of rain. If you have a combination of your southern jet, as we know, will be I'm almost positive that the southern jet would be very active due to the El Nino, but obviously there's other factors that go into this. But like I was saying, a combination of that with cold Arctic air, you'll have a repeat of last year almost. Record-breaking snow events in the mountains of Nevada and California, and also record cold as well. But then again, this always can change. Like we said 2 weeks ago, it wasn't looking like this. It looked like somewhat of a strong, let's say, polar vortex, but now, as you can see here, it definitely does not look strong at all. I'll keep you guys updated, but for now, I hope everyone had a great Halloween and hope